Today's story will make your blood boil before making you stand and cheer. A black executive decides to test his own bank's customer service by arriving incognito, only to face the ugly reality millions experience daily. Watch as entrenched discrimination collides with unexpected authority in a moment that transforms an entire industry. Security shoved him out, unaware. The black CEO owned every vault inside. Security guard roughly grabs Nicholas Johnson's arm, dragging him toward the exit. People like you don't belong here. Nicholas, dressed in casual but expensive clothes, remains oddly calm as he's publicly humiliated. The branch manager, Mary Meadow, stands by with a smug smile, having called security after Nicholas requested access to the premium investment floor. Her perfectly manicured fingers adjust her designer blazer as she surveys the scene with satisfaction. "We have standards here," she announces to waiting customers, voice carrying across the marble lobby. "This is Pinnacle Trust, not some check-cashing store." The security guard's grip tightens as he pushes Nicholas through the glass doors onto the sunlit sidewalk. Nicholas stumbles slightly but recovers his balance with quiet dignity. He straightens his collar, his face betraying no emotion as he reaches for his phone. Little do they know who they've just thrown out of his own bank. 1 hour earlier. Nicholas Johnson guides his modest Toyota into the downtown parking structure. The mid-morning sun gleams off his car, not ostentatious, deliberately so. He adjusts his simple button-up shirt in the rearview mirror, his Patek Philippe watch, worth more than most employees' annual salaries, catching the light momentarily. Today marks his quarterly secret shopper visit. As CEO of Pinnacle Trust for 3 years, Nicholas personally evaluates random branches without warning. It's a practice he implemented after acquiring the struggling institution, determined to understand the customer experience firsthand. He's kept his image scarce online, a strategic decision that now serves a different purpose. He steps into the lobby, bypassing the executive entrance. Marble floors reflect the morning light as customers wait in orderly lines. Nicholas observes everything: the teller's body language, the wait time, the subtle hierarchies of service. He deliberately joins the general line rather than approaching the premium service desk. Mary Meadow notices him immediately. From her vantage point near the loan officer desks, she surveys the lobby like a general inspecting troops. Her eyes narrow as they lock onto Nicholas. The branch manager's gaze catalogs his appearance with clinical efficiency. His skin color registers first, then his casual clothes, which she mentally classifies as trying too hard to look professional. She completely misses the subtle markers of wealth, the hand-stitched collar of his shirt, the artisan leather of his shoes, the quiet confidence in his posture. When Nicholas reaches the teller window and inquires about premium investment services, Mary materializes beside him with practiced swiftness. "I can help you with that," she says, voice honeyed yet somehow brittle. Her eyes perform another assessment, more thorough this time. "Those services are for established clients with significant portfolios," she explains slowly, as if speaking to a child struggling with complex concepts. "Perhaps I can direct you to our basic checking accounts. They're quite straightforward." Nicholas meets her gaze directly. "I understand premium services require certain thresholds. I'd like information about those specific offerings." Mary's smile tightens at his persistence. "Do you currently have an account with us?" "No, but I'm interested in establishing one." Relief flickers across her face. "Then I'm afraid those services require a minimum investment that might not be suitable for your situation." Nicholas nods thoughtfully. "I understand. In that case, I'd like to speak with the investment director directly." Mary's smile vanishes entirely, replaced by something colder, more defensive. "Security!" Mary calls over her shoulder, never taking her eyes off Nicholas. "We have a situation!" 2 security guards materialize from opposite corners of the lobby. Both white, both moving with military precision. The larger one, his name tag reads Frank, positions himself between Nicholas and Mary, hand resting casually on his taser. "Is there a problem here?" His tone suggests Nicholas is automatically the problem, question merely a formality. Nicholas maintains his composure, shoulders relaxed, voice steady. No problem. I simply ask to speak with someone about your premium investment services. Mary speaks over him, her voice carrying through the suddenly quiet lobby. This individual is being disruptive after being informed our premium services aren't appropriate for him. Nicholas raises one eyebrow, the only indication of his surprise. On what basis did you determine that? A flush creeps up Mary's neck, not quite reaching her face. We have certain criteria, which are... Nicholas interrupts softly, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow commanding the space. The lobby has grown still. Customers in line watch the confrontation unfold, some with uncomfortable recognition in their eyes, others with morbid curiosity. A young woman shifts her weight from one foot to another, fingers hovering over her phone. Mary lowers her voice, aware of the attention they're attracting. Our premium clients typically maintain minimum balances of 7 figures. I understand, Nicholas nods. And you've determined I don't meet this threshold. How exactly? Frank shifts impatiently, hand still resting on his taser. Sir, if you're not a client, you need to leave. I'd like to become a client, Nicholas states simply. That's why I'm here. Mary's professional smile returns, tight around the edges. Perhaps you can make an appointment and return with your financial statements. Would your other potential clients need to provide financial statements before even speaking with an advisor? Nicholas asks, genuine curiosity in his tone. The second security guard, Dave emblazoned on his badge, steps forward. Sir, you're holding up other customers. Nicholas looks around pointedly at the people watching. No one appears to be in a hurry. An older white woman in line actually nods in agreement with him, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. I'd like to speak with your regional manager, Nicholas states calmly. Mary's expression hardens, professional veneer cracking slightly. That won't be necessary. I've made my decision. The air in the lobby feels charged, the mundane transaction transformed into something more significant with each passing second. Then I'd like your full name and employee ID for my records, Nicholas says, reaching for his phone. Mary's face contorts with indignation when Nicholas requests her information. Her eyes widen as though he's committed an unpardonable offense. Are you threatening me? She demands, voice rising sharply. Several customers pull out their phones, sensing a viral moment developing in real time. Frank steps closer to Nicholas, invading his personal space. Put the phone away, sir. The command carries an unmistakable threat. Nicholas keeps his phone in hand, thumb hovering over the record button. I'm simply documenting this interaction. Mary gestures sharply to the security guards. Escort him out. Now! Her voice carries a finality that transforms the suggestion into an order. Frank grabs Nicholas's arm with unnecessary force, causing him to drop his phone. The device clatters against the marble floor. When Nicholas bends to retrieve it, Dave shoves him toward the door. Move it! The physical contact escalates the situation instantly. A murmur of disapproval ripples through the watching customers. The young woman who had been hesitating now openly films the confrontation, her expression troubled. This is unnecessary, Nicholas states, his calm demeanor showing the first hairline fractures. I have every right to be here. No, you don't, Mary replies loudly, playing to her audience of bank customers. This is private property, and we reserve the right to refuse service. Frank tightens his grip on Nicholas's arm, fingers digging into the expensive fabric of his shirt. People like you don't belong here, he mutters, voice pitched to carry just far enough for nearby customers to hear. An elderly black customer in line looks away, his face a mask of pain, the humiliation by proxy evident in the tight set of his shoulders, the way his eyes fix on the floor. A white couple whispers to each other, discomfort evident in their posture, yet they remain rooted in place, unwilling to intervene. At the door, Nicholas makes one last attempt. You're making a serious mistake. His voice remains measured, but a hint of something, perhaps warning, edges his words. Mary, now fully performing for her audience, raises her voice to ensure maximum impact. "We have standards here. This is Pinnacle Trust, not some check-cashing store." The statement lands like a slap, its implications unmistakable. The security guards push Nicholas onto the sun-drenched sidewalk with a final shove. Dave tosses his phone after him, the screen cracking against the concrete. "Don't come back." The threat hangs in the air between them. Through the glass doors, Nicholas watches Mary reassure waiting customers, straightening her jacket with a satisfied expression. The young woman who had been filming quickly puts her phone away, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Outside, Nicholas picks up his cracked phone, brushing concrete dust from the screen. The camera lingers on his face, shock giving way to something harder, more determined. He takes a deep breath, straightens his posture, and walks with deliberate dignity to his car. Inside the vehicle, shielded from public view, he finally allows himself a moment of raw emotion. Hands shaking slightly, breath coming in short, controlled bursts. Then he makes a phone call. "Rebecca, this is Nicholas Johnson. I need you to implement Protocol 0 at the downtown branch immediately." A calm, professional voice responds through the speaker. "Understood, Mr. Johnson. Protocol 0 initiated." Inside the bank, Mary's phone rings, the caller ID displaying two ominous words: Executive Office. Nicholas drives to a nearby coffee shop, his exterior calm restored but his mind racing through scenarios with chess master precision. He selects a corner table back to the wall and orders a simple black coffee. The barista barely glances at him, another invisible interaction that registers in his mental catalog. From his vantage point, Nicholas observes the coffee shop's subtle social choreography. He watches who gets immediate smiles, who waits longest for service, who receives the benefit of the doubt when payment cards require extra verification. The patterns aren't random. They never are. He pulls out a second phone, a secure executive line unknown to most Pinnacle employees. The wallpaper briefly illuminates Nicholas with his wife and two daughters at his Pinnacle Trust CEO inauguration 3 years prior. Their proud faces remind him why today's incident isn't just personal. Meanwhile, at the bank, Mary answers the call from the executive office, her voice shifting into an artificially sweet register that bears no resemblance to the tone she used with Nicholas minutes earlier. "Downtown branch, Mary Meadow speaking." Rebecca Johnson, Nicholas's chief of staff, speaks with icy precision that makes Mary's artificial sweetness curdle. "Ms. Meadow, this is the executive office. We've received a concerning report about an incident at your branch." Mary's smile falters, unseen by the caller but evident in her voice. "There was a minor security issue that was handled according to protocol. Nothing to be concerned about." "I see," Rebecca replies, each word measured and deliberate. "And did this minor issue involve physically removing someone from the premises?" Mary hesitates, fingers tightening around the phone. "An unqualified individual was being disruptive." "Unqualified based on what assessment?" Rebecca interrupts, the question landing like a precise scalpel cut. In the coffee shop, Nicholas receives a text from Rebecca. "She's digging her grave. Security footage secured." He nods to himself, then calls Marcus Chen, Pinnacle's general counsel. "Marcus, I'm implementing a full ethics review of the downtown branch, effective immediately. I was just physically removed from the premises." Marcus's shock transmits clearly through the phone. "They put hands on you? We need to address this carefully, Nicholas." 3 years, Nicholas says quietly, voice pitched for Marcus alone despite the coffee shop's ambient noise. 3 years I've been running this company, turning it around from the brink of collapse, instituting diversity training, community reinvestment, second chance hiring programs, and still this happens in my own bank. "We'll handle it," Marcus assures him, professional confidence masking his concern. "No," Nicholas's voice hardens, resolve crystallizing. "I'll handle it. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who looks like me who's been denied service, given higher interest rates, or treated with suspicion. It ends here. Back at the bank, Mary grows increasingly defensive with Rebecca. I don't appreciate your tone. I was protecting our clientele. Interesting choice of words, Rebecca replies, the chill in her voice dropping several degrees. A full review team will arrive within the hour. Secure all footage and prepare your incident report. Mary pales, knuckles white around the phone receiver. Review team? For removing a difficult non-client? For assaulting the CEO of Pinnacle Trust? The line goes dead. Mary stares at the phone in disbelief, the implications hitting her in waves. Mary's hands shake as she frantically searches Nicholas Johnson Pinnacle Trust on her phone, and the color drains from her face as his official portrait appears. In the bank, chaos erupts in Mary's carefully ordered world. She retreats to her office, closing the door with trembling hands before frantically dialing her regional director, James Patterson. The phone rings 3 times before he answers. James, we have a situation. Her voice quavers despite her attempt at control. I think I just kicked the CEO out of my branch. You did what? James's incredulity blasts through the speaker. Nicholas Johnson was there? Why didn't you recognize him? I've never seen him in person. Panic edges Mary's voice higher. His photos online are minimal, and he wasn't dressed like... She stops herself abruptly, realizing the trap in her own words. Wasn't dressed like what exactly, Mary? James's voice turns cold, professional distance replacing their usual camaraderie. Mary ignores the question, panic mounting. What do I do? Damage control, immediately. James's voice shifts to damage limitation mode. Write up your version of events before the review team arrives. Focus on his behavior, not his appearance. Mary nods, though James can't see her, already pulling up the incident report template on her computer. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, subtly altering details, claiming Nicholas was loud and aggressive, that he refused to follow protocol, that he threatened staff. The fiction comes easily, wrapped in bureaucratic language designed to shift blame. Meanwhile, Nicholas has moved to his real office in the corporate headquarters across town. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcase the city skyline as he reviews the security footage on his tablet, watching the entire interaction unfold from multiple angles. The evidence is damning, clearly showing Mary's dismissive attitude and the security guard's unnecessary force. His expression remains neutral, but his eyes harden at certain moments. Frank's muttered comment, Dave tossing his phone, Mary's theatrical pronouncement to the waiting customers. Rebecca enters with a folder, her efficiency a counterpoint to the emotional charge of the situation. HR has Mary's file. Multiple complaints from customers of color over the past year, all dismissed by her regional director as misunderstandings. Nicholas nods grimly, unsurprised yet disappointed. And the security guards? Contractors, not our employees. But the company we use has a history of excessive force complaints. Terminate the contract immediately, Nicholas instructs, his decision instant and irrevocable. And I want James Patterson in my office within the hour. At the downtown branch, the review team arrives. 4 serious professionals in tailored suits, led by Marcus Chen. They commandeer Mary's office without ceremony, their presence transforming her sanctuary into occupied territory. This is outrageous, Mary protests, professional composure crumbling. I was following security protocols. Marcus remains impassive, his expression betraying nothing as he places his briefcase on her desk. We'll need access to all your communications regarding customer qualification assessments for the past year. Mary's face reveals her panic, the scope of the investigation far beyond what she anticipated. That's hundreds of interactions. Yes, Marcus agrees, meeting her gaze directly. It is. Mary watches through her office window as Frank and Dave are escorted from the building, their security badges confiscated. James Patterson arrives at Nicholas's office, adjusting his tie with nervous fingers. The CEO sits behind his desk, reviewing documents with methodical focus. Nicholas doesn't stand to greet him, doesn't offer his hand, doesn't engage in the usual pleasantries that oil the corporate machinery. "Nicholas, I want to personally apologize for this unfortunate incident," James begins smoothly, his voice practiced in crisis management. "Mary is one of our highest-performing branch managers, but clearly there was a serious lapse in judgment today." Nicholas looks up, his expression unreadable. "When I acquired this bank, what was the first initiative I implemented, James?" James shifts uncomfortably, thrown by the unexpected question. "The Community Reinvestment Program." "Before that," Nicholas interrupts, voice soft but unyielding. "The very first policy change." James swallows, suddenly aware of the trap closing around him. "The anti-discrimination protocols." "Correct." Nicholas slides a folder across the polished desk surface, which included quarterly bias training and customer service equity reviews. He waits as James tentatively opens the folder. "This contains 12 complaints against Mary Meadow from customers of color in the past year. All were routed through your office. All were dismissed." James pales, his carefully constructed explanation crumbling before he can deploy it. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," Nicholas says evenly. "But first, I'd like you to watch something." He turns his monitor to show James the security footage from earlier that day. The high-definition video leaves nothing to interpretation. Every dismissive glance, every power play, every moment of escalation captured in merciless clarity. The sequence ends with Nicholas being physically pushed onto the sidewalk, his phone thrown after him like trash. "This isn't just about me," Nicholas says quietly as the video freezes on the final frame. "It's about every customer who doesn't look like you or Mary who received second-class treatment. It's about the loans denied, the accounts scrutinized, the suspicion and disrespect that's become normalized under your supervision. At the downtown branch, the review team dismantles the facade piece by piece. They interview staff members individually, creating a safe space for truth that many have never experienced within these walls. Several tellers reluctantly admit they've witnessed Mary treating customers differently based on appearance. One young woman breaks down in tears, confessing she almost quit because of the toxic environment, but needed the job to support her mother's medical bills. "She told us to direct certain types of people to basic accounts automatically," the teller whispers, glancing nervously at the door as if Mary might appear. "If they asked questions, we were supposed to say the premium services required special approval." Marcus calls Nicholas, his professional composure intact but urgency threading his voice. "It's worse than we thought. This branch has a pattern of steering minority customers toward minimum service products regardless of their qualifications." "Document everything," Nicholas instructs, his voice hardening with purpose. "We're not just addressing today's incident, we're tearing out the rot." Meanwhile, James sits across from Nicholas, sweat beading at his temples despite the perfectly regulated office temperature. The implications of the investigation expand with each passing second, reaching far beyond a single humiliating incident. James wipes sweat from his brow. "What are you planning to do, Nicholas?" "What am I planning to do?" Nicholas repeats James's question, letting the words hang in the air between them. "I'm planning to honor my commitment to every customer and employee of this institution. The commitment that apparently you never took seriously." Nicholas stands, walking to the window overlooking the city. The afternoon sun casts his shadow long across the office floor. 3 years ago, when I acquired Pinnacle Trust, the board was concerned that a black CEO would drive away the old money clients. Remember that conversation, James? James looks at the floor, unable to meet Nicholas's gaze. "That wasn't my position." "But you didn't object either." Nicholas turns to face him, silhouetted against the city skyline. "Instead, you assured me you were fully committed to the new direction, that you understood the importance of making Pinnacle accessible to all qualified customers, regardless of appearance." Every word lands like a precisely aimed arrow, finding the vulnerable spaces in James's carefully constructed professional armor. Meanwhile, at the downtown branch, Mary grows increasingly defensive as Marcus reviews her record. The careful facade of professionalism crumbles with each new revelation. "This is a witch hunt." Her voice rises, drawing glances from staff outside her glass-walled office. "You're taking isolated incidents and constructing a false narrative." Marcus slides a document across the desk. "This is a statistical analysis of service-level assignments at your branch compared to customer demographics. Care to explain why Black and Latino customers with identical financial profiles to white customers were 74% less likely to be offered premium services?" Mary stammers, her practiced explanations suddenly inadequate. "There are other factors, risk assessments, relationship longevity, all controlled for in the analysis," Marcus interrupts, his tone clinical rather than accusatory. "This isn't coincidence, Ms. Meadow. It's pattern and practice." Back at headquarters, Nicholas receives an urgent call from the board chair, Victoria Summers. Her voice carries the weight of institutional power, yet there's an unfamiliar note of genuine concern. "Nicholas, there are rumors flying about mass terminations at downtown. What's happening?" "Not rumors, Victoria. Facts." Nicholas's voice is steady, resolved. "I was physically removed from our downtown branch today because the manager decided I didn't look like I belonged there." Victoria is silent for a moment, processing. "My God, are you all right?" "Physically, yes, but I've discovered this isn't an isolated incident. The branch has been systematically discriminating against customers of color." The implications hang between them, unspoken yet unmistakable, not just for the bank, but for the board that governs it. "What do you need from the board?" Victoria's question is direct, pragmatic. Nicholas's voice hardens, years of compromise giving way to absolute clarity. Full support for what comes next. The machinery of accountability begins to turn, gathering momentum with each revelation, each document, each testimony. Decades of unchallenged discrimination face their reckoning in a single afternoon. "Mr. Johnson," his assistant interrupts, "the media is calling. Someone posted video of the incident online." The video spreads across social media with wildfire intensity, smartphone footage showing Nicholas being physically ejected from the bank while Mary watches with satisfaction. The hashtag had banking while black rockets to nationwide trending status within hours, each share amplifying the undeniable evidence of discrimination. Nicholas convenes an emergency executive team meeting in the sleek conference room overlooking the financial district. The space falls silent as he enters, every face reflecting awareness of what transpired. He remains standing, commanding the space through presence rather than position. "Today, I experienced what countless customers have endured in our branches. The difference is I own this bank." He clicks a remote, displaying the viral video on the wall screen. Several executives wince visibly as they watch their CEO being manhandled by security guards. "This isn't just a PR crisis." Nicholas's voice cuts through the uncomfortable silence. "This is a fundamental failure of our values and policies, and it stops today." Rebecca distributes folders to everyone present, her efficiency a counterpoint to the emotional weight of the moment. "Inside, you'll find our comprehensive response plan. Phase 1 begins immediately." Nicholas continues, his voice gaining momentum without raising in volume. "I acquired Pinnacle Trust when it was failing, not just financially, but ethically. The previous leadership had created a culture that valued certain customers over others, that trained staff to make snap judgments based on appearance rather than data." He clicks to the next slide, statistics showing disparities in service levels across demographic groups. The numbers tell a story more damning than any anecdote could. "For 3 years, we've been working to change this culture. Today proves we haven't done enough." Marcus Chen stands, his legal mind already mapping the response strategy. "Effective immediately, we're implementing Protocol 0 at the downtown branch. All leadership suspended pending review, comprehensive audit of all customer interactions, and direct executive oversight of operations." The words Protocol 0 send a ripple through the room. the crisis response reserved for existential threats to the institution. Meanwhile, at the downtown branch, Mary is called to the main floor. Her face drains of color as she sees the bank transformed, corporate response team members at every station, a large portrait of Nicholas Johnson now hanging prominently in the lobby with the caption, "Nicholas Johnson, CEO and Chairman, Pinnacle Trust." Marcus approaches her, radiating calm authority. "Ms. Meadow, we're implementing Protocol 0. You're suspended pending investigation. Please surrender your credentials and access cards." Mary sputters, indignation battling with dawning terror. "You can't do this. I've been with this bank for 15 years. "And in those 15 years, Marcus replies evenly, "you've consistently failed to uphold our most basic values." He pauses, making sure his next words land with precision. "Mr. Johnson personally requested I deliver this message. People like you don't belong here." The security guards who ejected Nicholas earlier watch in shock as their supervisor informs them their contract has been terminated, effective immediately. They surrender their badges in silent humiliation, now experiencing the power differential from the other side. Back at headquarters, Nicholas approves a public statement acknowledging the incident and outlining immediate actions being taken. He adds a personal touch, announcing he will personally work at the downtown branch for the next week, meeting with customers and hearing their experiences directly. Victoria calls again, her board chair authority balanced with genuine concern. "The board is unanimously behind you, Nicholas. But we're concerned about the legal implications of such public actions." "I understand the concern," Nicholas responds, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience transformed into institutional purpose. "But this isn't just a legal issue, it's a moral one. And sometimes the right response can't be hidden behind closed doors and confidential settlements." Nicholas's phone buzzes with a text from his wife. "Saw the video. So proud of how you're handling this. Changing the system from within isn't easy, but you're doing it." The next morning, Nicholas arrives at the downtown branch in a crisp suit that signals his position without apology. Heads turn as he walks through the front door, the man thrown out yesterday returning not as a victim seeking revenge, but as a leader implementing reform. He takes position at a desk in the main lobby with a simple sign, "Nicholas Johnson, CEO, how can I help you today?" Local news crews gather outside as word spreads that the black CEO who was thrown out yesterday has returned, not for revenge, but for reformation. The transformation of Pinnacle Trust unfolds over the next 2 weeks in a carefully orchestrated response to the crisis. The institution that once ejected its own CEO now becomes the reluctant model for addressing systemic discrimination in banking. Nicholas spends 3 full days at the downtown branch, personally meeting with customers. The marble-floored lobby that witnessed his humiliation now serves as the stage for institutional atonement. He listens to their stories with focused attention, many minority customers sharing similar experiences of dismissive treatment, higher rates, and limited services despite qualifying for better. An elderly black woman clutches his hand across the desk. "They made me feel like I was begging for something I didn't deserve," she tells him, voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. 40 years I've banked here. 40 years of being treated like a favor rather than a customer." Nicholas takes detailed notes, apologizes on behalf of the institution, and promises concrete changes, not generic corporate assurances, but specific, measurable actions with deadlines attached. Meanwhile, the corporate response escalates on multiple fronts with mechanical precision. The legal team, led by Marcus, conducts a thorough investigation, interviewing every employee at the downtown branch and reviewing thousands of customer interactions. Temporary staff from headquarters maintain operations while the investigation proceeds, each trained specifically in equitable service delivery. "It's worse than we thought," Marcus reports during the daily crisis management meeting. "We've compiled a damning report showing systemic issues, not just at downtown, but at several branches under James Patterson's supervision." The conference room falls silent as implications ripple outward from the initial incident. revealing not isolated failures but institutional rot. HR implements immediate retraining for all customer-facing staff nationwide, with enhanced bias recognition modules and clear consequences for non-compliance. External diversity consultants are brought in to revamp hiring and promotion practices, focusing on measurable outcomes rather than performative compliance. The marketing team launches a transparent campaign acknowledging the failure and outlining specific steps being taken to address it. Rather than hiding from the controversy, Pinnacle leans into it, positioning the response as a model for corporate accountability. "We're not pretending this didn't happen," Nicholas tells the crisis team. "We're showing how institutions should respond when they fail their customers and their values." Rebecca oversees a comprehensive audit of lending and account approval patterns across all branches, identifying disparities that had gone unaddressed for years. The findings lead to a revision of underwriting criteria to eliminate subjective judgments that could mask bias. The algorithms themselves contain embedded biases, Rebecca explains, presenting her findings. They were built on historical data that reflected and perpetuated existing discrimination. The board convenes an ethics committee specifically focused on equitable banking practices, with community representatives given voting positions, an unprecedented move in the industry that generates both praise and resistance. "This isn't just about optics," Nicholas tells the committee at their first meeting. "It's about creating structural accountability through shared power." Mary's suspension becomes termination after the investigation reveals a pattern of discriminatory practices spanning her entire tenure. The evidence is irrefutable. Emails directing staff to scrutinize certain customers more closely, performance metrics that rewarded steering minorities toward minimum service products, complaint reports buried or rewritten to obscure patterns. She threatens to sue for wrongful termination, hiring an aggressive attorney who specializes in workplace disputes. The threat dissolves when Marcus presents the evidence dossier, hundreds of pages documenting not just bias but deliberate, systematic discrimination. "Your client didn't make a mistake," Marcus tells her attorney during their only meeting. "She implemented a system of differential treatment that violated not just our policies but federal banking regulations." James Patterson is offered a choice: resignation or demotion. He chooses resignation, issuing a statement accepting responsibility for oversight failures but stopping short of admitting to personal bias. His departure creates space for promoting Daphne Rodriguez, a longtime middle manager whose previous recommendations for more inclusive policies had been consistently overlooked. The security company whose guards manhandled Nicholas faces its own crisis as other corporate clients begin canceling contracts after seeing the viral video. They issue a public apology and announce a complete overhaul of their training protocols, desperate to contain the damage to their reputation and bottom line. Industry analysts initially predict Pinnacle will suffer from the scandal, their quarterly forecasts projecting significant account closures and market share loss. Something unexpected happens instead. Account applications increase, particularly from minority customers who see Nicholas's response as proof the bank is serious about equal treatment. Several major institutional clients publicly commend Pinnacle's transparency and accountability, with one Fortune 500 CEO stating, "This is how responsible institutions handle failure, not with denial, but with determination to improve." Nicholas receives invitations to speak about the incident from major news programs, morning shows, and industry panels. He declines most, agreeing only to an in-depth interview with a respected black journalist who focuses on economic justice issues. "What happened to me happens to people without my position and power every day," Nicholas states during the interview, leaning forward slightly to emphasize his point. "The difference is, I could do something about it. The real measure of our success won't be how we handled this single incident, but whether we create lasting change." The young woman who filmed the original incident comes forward, identifying herself as Amara Washington, a banking industry employee herself who has witnessed similar discrimination at her institution. Her public statement triggers investigations at other banks, suggesting the problem extends far beyond Pinnacle. "I filmed it because I've seen it before," she explains in a viral social media post. But I've never seen a company respond like Pinnacle did afterward. That's the difference between performative diversity and actual accountability. The corporate response culminates in a comprehensive reform package that fundamentally restructures how Pinnacle evaluates, serves, and values its customers. Nicholas presents the changes not as a crisis response, but as the new operational standard, measurable, enforceable, and transparent. This isn't damage control, he tells the board during their review of the package. This is who we are now. Mary receives a certified letter, her hands trembling as she opens it. Inside, a notice of a formal discrimination hearing with the Banking Regulatory Commission, potentially threatening her ability to work in the industry again. The regulatory hearing takes place in a sterile government building downtown. Fluorescent lights cast everyone in the same unflattering pallor, bureaucratic beige walls offering no distraction from the proceedings. Mary arrives with an expensive attorney, her silk blouse and tailored suit projecting confidence despite the nervous twitch at the corner of her mouth. She's prepared a compelling narrative painting herself as the victim of corporate scapegoating. The hearing room falls silent as Nicholas enters, not as a witness, but as an official observer. He takes a seat at the back, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. Mary pales at the sight of him, her carefully constructed composure faltering for a crucial moment. The commissioners present their findings first. Statistical evidence of discriminatory practices at Mary's branch spanning years rather than months. Testimony from former employees about explicit instructions to treat customers differently based on appearance, and the damning security footage showing Nicholas's treatment. The evidence builds methodically, each piece connecting to form an irrefutable pattern. Mary's defense crumbles under questioning, the commissioners probing with surgical precision. Ms. Meadow, in your 15 years as branch manager, did you ever complete the anti-bias training implemented 3 years ago? The commissioner's question hangs in the air, deceptively simple. Mary shifts in her seat. I delegated that to my assistant manager. I was too valuable on the floor. So you never personally engaged with the material? The commissioner's follow-up cuts through her evasion. I understood the concepts already. Mary's voice betrays a hint of condescension. When questioned about her initial assessment of Nicholas, she stumbles, professional facade cracking. He didn't look like our typical premium client. The commissioner leans forward. And what does a typical premium client look like, Ms. Meadow? Her attorney intervenes, objecting to the line of questioning, but the damage is done. The unspoken bias becomes spoken, hanging in the air for all to acknowledge. When presented with the statistical disparities in service at her branch, Mary attempts to explain them away with thinly veiled stereotypes about financial responsibility and relationship banking, each justification digging her professional grave deeper. Our premium services require certain financial literacy levels, she explains, apparently oblivious to the implications of her words. And you determined these literacy levels how exactly? The commissioner's question exposes the subjective judgments masquerading as objective criteria. The most damaging testimony comes from a former teller who recounts Mary explicitly instructing staff to direct urban-looking customers to basic services regardless of their stated needs or obvious qualifications. She told us to watch for certain signals, the teller testifies, unable to meet Mary's glare from across the room. The way they dressed, how they spoke, whether they seemed comfortable in the bank. It was never written down, but we all understood what she meant. Throughout the proceeding, Nicholas remains silent, his presence a powerful reminder of the human impact of Mary's policies. He takes no notes, asks no questions, makes no statements. His testimony lives in the security footage playing on screens throughout the room, the moment when subjective bias became objective action. The Commission's decision is unanimous. Mary is barred from working in any federally insured financial institution for 5 years and must complete extensive ethics training before reapplying for industry credentials. The penalty is severe by regulatory standards, reflecting the egregiousness of the violations. Outside the hearing room, reporters swarm Mary. Her attorney attempts damage control, stepping forward with practiced statements about reviewing options and procedural concerns. Mary pushes him aside, her composure finally shattering completely. "This is reverse discrimination." Her voice rises, drawing attention from everyone in the hallway. "They're destroying my career because of political correctness." A reporter calls out from the crowd, "Do you regret how you treated CEO Johnson?" Mary's response reveals her true character, the bias she can no longer conceal. "He should have identified himself. How was I supposed to know?" She stops abruptly, realizing the implication of her unfinished sentence. "Know what, Ms. Meadow?" The reporter presses, microphone extended. "That he was the CEO, or that a black man could be the CEO?" Mary pushes through the crowd without answering, her silence more damning than any defense. As Mary leaves in disgrace, Nicholas receives a call from an unexpected source, the banking industry's regulatory chief. "Mr. Johnson, what happened to you has opened our eyes to a much bigger problem. We need your help." 6 months later, Nicholas stands at a podium before the Association of National Banks, delivering the keynote address at their annual conference. The grand ballroom brims with industry power, CEOs, regulators, and policymakers who collectively control trillions in assets and shape the financial landscape for millions of Americans. "What happened at Pinnacle Trust wasn't unique," Nicholas begins, his voice carrying to every corner of the hushed room. "It was simply visible. For every discriminatory incident captured on video, thousands occur without documentation, without recourse, without justice." He clicks to a slide showing new industry data, the results of a comprehensive study commissioned after his incident. The numbers appear in stark relief against the screen, impossible to dismiss or explain away. Significant disparities in loan approvals, interest rates, and service levels across racial lines, even when controlling for all financial factors. "This isn't about individual bad actors," Nicholas continues, his gaze sweeping across uncomfortable faces in the audience. "It's about systems that enable bias to flourish unchecked." Several executives shift in their seats. Others maintain carefully neutral expressions. A few nod in reluctant recognition of truths they've long ignored. "At Pinnacle, we've implemented what we call the Transparency Protocol." Nicholas outlines the changes with methodical precision. Quarterly public reporting of service metrics broken down by demographic categories, not buried in appendices or coded in technical language, but presented clearly where customers can actually find and understand them. Mystery shopper programs specifically testing for bias, with results tied directly to branch performance evaluations and leadership compensation. Compensation structures redesigned to reward equitable treatment rather than merely punishing its absence. Community Oversight Board with real authority, not advisory capacity, but actual veto power over certain policies. Transparent complaint process with guaranteed resolution timelines and external auditing. Each element represents a departure from industry norms, a challenge to the comfortable opacity that has sheltered discriminatory practices for generations. "The results have been revealing," Nicholas continues, clicking to the next slide. "In branches where disparities were highest, we found leadership that dismissed the importance of equity initiatives as political correctness or unnecessary regulation. Where services were most equal, we found leaders who embraced accountability." The data tells its own story. Graphics showing improved metrics across all demographics at branches that implemented the protocol fully versus those that resisted or complied minimally. Nicholas introduces a coalition of banks that have adopted similar measures, with early data showing improved customer satisfaction across all demographics and, surprisingly to some, increased profitability as previously underserved customers bring their business to institutions where they feel respected. The regulatory chief steps up next, announcing new industry guidelines inspired by Pinnacle's reforms. The requirements aren't as stringent as Nicholas advocated, but represent significant progress in an industry resistant to change. "These aren't suggestions," the regulatory chief emphasizes. "They're requirements with compliance deadlines and verification protocols." Behind the scenes, Nicholas meets with a group of minority bank executives who thank him for using his position to force change that they've been quietly fighting for throughout their careers. "We've been saying these things for years," one veteran banker tells him, emotion evident in her voice. "But they didn't listen until it happened to someone with your power." "The door is open now," another executive observes, "but we'll have to fight to keep it from closing again." Nicholas nods, understanding both the victory and its limitations. This isn't victory, it's just the end of the beginning. A notification appears on Nicholas's phone. Another video has gone viral, showing discrimination at a different bank, the caption reading, "Who will be their Nicholas Johnson?" 1 year after the incident, Nicholas sits in his office reviewing the quarterly Equity Impact Report. The golden afternoon light filters through the windows, softening the hard edges of corporate architecture. Pinnacle Trust has transformed, not just its policies, but its culture. The downtown branch, once the epicenter of discrimination, now has the highest customer satisfaction scores in the network under new leadership. The metrics tell a story of genuine change. Loan approvals show statistical parity across demographic groups. Premium service enrollment has diversified substantially, and employee satisfaction scores have improved across all branches. The transformation hasn't been painless. Several long-term employees resigned rather than adapt to the new standards, but the institution stands stronger for the reformation. Rebecca enters with news, tablet in hand. The Banking Equity Act passed committee. It goes to the full vote next week. Nicholas allows himself a small smile. The legislation, inspired in part by Pinnacle's reforms, would mandate transparency and accountability measures across the industry. Not everything he advocated, but a meaningful step forward. "Any word from our former colleagues?" he asks, glancing up from the report. Rebecca nods. "James Patterson is working at a small credit union in the suburbs. Apparently, he's become quite the advocate for fair lending practices." "And Mary?" "Still unable to find work in banking. Last I heard, she was selling real estate." Nicholas nods thoughtfully. "I don't take pleasure in their downfall, but I do believe in consequences." He turns to the window, reflecting on the year's journey. The city sprawls before him, millions of lives intersecting in complex economic relationships mediated by institutions like his. "You know, when I bought this bank, some board members warned me to keep a low profile. Don't make your face too public," they said. "Let the institution speak for itself." "They were afraid you'd scare away the old money," Rebecca acknowledges, naming the unspoken concern. "Yes, and part of me understood their concern, the business reality of bias. So I compromised, stayed somewhat in the background." He turns back to her. "That was a mistake. Representation matters. Visibility matters." Now, Nicholas's portrait hangs prominently in every branch. The quarterly reports include his personal statement on equity goals. His once private philanthropic work supporting financial literacy in underserved communities is now a central part of Pinnacle's public mission. A knock at the door interrupts them. Marcus enters with a young man in a sharp suit, confidence evident in his posture. "Nicholas, this is Deshaun Johnson. He's joining our executive leadership program." Nicholas stands to shake the young man's hand. "Welcome to Pinnacle, Deshaun." "Thank you, sir." Deshaun's grip is firm, his gaze direct. I wanted to tell you that I was there that day, at the downtown branch. I was a customer waiting in line when they threw you out." Nicholas looks at him with interest, the coincidence striking. "I was about to close my account after what I saw," Deshaun continues. "But then I read about what you did afterward, how you changed things instead of just punishing people. That's when I decided I wanted to work here." Later, Nicholas visits the downtown branch, now managed by Lucia Cortez, a longtime banker who had been passed over for promotion under the previous leadership. The space feels different, more welcoming, more diverse in both staff and clientele. The marble and glass remain, but the invisible barriers have dissolved. As he observes the busy lobby, an elderly black man approaches him. recognition lighting his weathered face. "You're him, aren't you? The CEO they threw out." Nicholas nods, extending his hand. "I've been banking here 40 years, the man says, his grip surprisingly strong. "Always felt like I had to dress up just to deposit my paycheck. First time in my life I feel respected when I walk in here." Nicholas meets his gaze directly. "That's exactly as it should be, sir." As Nicholas drives home, he reflects on the transformation, not just of Pinnacle Trust, but of himself. The incident forced him to confront his own compromise with an unjust system, his attempt to work within it without disrupting it too much. Now he understands. Meaningful change requires visibility, courage, and sometimes confrontation. Traffic flows around him as the city transitions from day to evening, lights beginning to flicker on in office buildings. His phone rings through the car's speaker system. The board chair, Victoria. "Nicholas, have you seen the industry numbers? Our approach is being adopted by 3 of the 5 largest banks in the country." "Good," he responds, signaling for a lane change. "But not enough." "Always pushing," Victoria chuckles, the sound carrying both affection and respect. "That's why we need you, which brings me to my call. The board has voted unanimously to extend your contract for another 5 years. Nicholas considers this, the weight of the decision settling over him. The past year has been the most challenging of his career, yet also the most meaningful. On one condition: we expand the transparency protocol to international operations. What we've done domestically needs to become our global standard. The regulatory environments are different, Victoria begins, caution evident in her voice. The values shouldn't be, Nicholas interrupts gently. Human dignity isn't a domestic policy. Victoria sighs, the sound of papers shuffling coming through the speakers. I'll present it to the board, Ishkel, but I think you already know their answer. After hanging up, Nicholas makes a personal note to visit international branches himself. No advance notice, no executive treatment. The work of transformation is never complete, always requiring vigilance against the human tendency to revert to comfortable patterns. His neighborhood comes into view, the familiar streets a welcome sight after a long day. At home, his wife greets him with news that their daughter has been elected student body president at her university. She ran on a platform of inclusive campus policies, she tells him, pride evident in her voice. Said she was inspired by her dad. Nicholas smiles, the personal impact of his public stand crystallizing in this moment. Change ripples outward. That's how it works. Later that evening, as they prepare dinner together, his wife asks, "Do you ever think about what might have happened if someone hadn't recorded that incident?" Nicholas considers this, knife pausing over the cutting board. Every day. For every documented injustice, countless others remain invisible. That's why the systems have to change, not just the individuals. He checks his phone one last time before dinner. Another bank has announced adoption of Pinnacle's equity standards. The hashtag #HadBankingEquity is trending, conversations happening that would have been unimaginable a year ago. 1 year ago, Nicholas muses, setting the table with careful precision, I was physically thrown out of my own bank because someone decided I didn't look like I belonged there. Today, we're changing how an entire industry defines belonging. His wife squeezes his hand, and it's just the beginning. If you've been moved by this story of justice and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to Beat Stories and hit the like button. Join our community where powerful stories of accountability come to life.